Hi, everybody, and welcome to Backstage. As you well know, the Division of Education at Conn-Selmer is a big part of the whole corporate mission. And those of us who are part of the Division of Education, well, it's made up of teachers. We're all teachers. And I'm sure those of you who are teachers, have thought many times, I wonder what it would be like not to be in the teaching community, but maybe over in the business world or the corporate world. And our crew, I call straddlers. We have 1 foot in corporate and we have 1 foot in education, or 1 foot on the pier and 1 foot on the boat. And we're always hoping the boat won't pull away from the pier where we have to make a choice to go one way or the other, or fall in the water. And one of our really key people who has an incredible background, and once you hear it, you're going to be like, whoa, this is unbelievable, is Walt Straiton. Walt is not only one of my dearest friends in the whole world, but he is also one of our educational support managers. So please say hello to my dear friend, Walt Straiton. Walt, how are you doing?
Marvelous, Tim. Great to see you. Thanks for the opportunity to get together, man. It's all good.
Did you get a haircut this morning too?
As a matter of fact, I did. I schedule one every 6 weeks, whether I need it or not. Yesterday, Paul, our cameraman, would be rolling on the floor because it wouldn't look very good.
Yeah, I do every 6 weeks as well. So
yeah, you can tell. You're probably due again.
Walt, tell us a little bit about your background, because it is so remarkable. It's quite a mosaic you bring to us.
Well, I loved your opening thing about like we're all straddlers and things like that. For me, I'm a true mongrel, and I appreciated the setup, but mine has been a quilted career. I live in north central Pennsylvania, and you have the Amish, and they make these beautiful quilts. Here in Indiana, what we're talking about, and they make them by hand and they hang them out. For me, it's been a piece of this and a piece of this and a piece of that along the way. I got my start in the business. I taught for 26 years at Williamsport High School, as you all know, and got to do I'm a dissertation shy of a PhD from Penn State. I did undergrad at what was Millersville State College at the time in Pennsylvania, now Millersville University. Did a master's at Eastman, and did some graduate work before. Enjoyed teaching K-12, got some forays into higher education. Been blessed to do some external projects with some pro orchestras and things along the way. That was kind of like the setup, and you just get into it.
Can you talk just a little bit about, because I think this is one of the most unusual, in fact, I think you're the only person I know that may be in this category, where you were the string teacher at the school, you were head of the string department, and you were also involved with the marching band. What a combination.
Okay. Well, I'll do this as quick as I can to take you back in my youth to put things in context. My musical journey started as as a hyper 5-year-old, and a Lowry organ showed up in the family home. And that was when they had the pointer system, and you learned how to play from there. And in 4th grade, it was time to do band instruments in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania public schools. And I wanted to be a trumpet player, but there was no money in the house, and my mother had a violin. So hence we started on violin. And my father, who was a former clarinetist and a beautiful Irish tenor, I guess decided to test the kid out a little bit. And the following year, I ended up with a saxophone, not an alto or a tenor, but a C melody saxophone that he had bought from a pawn shop in Philadelphia. Because the C melody saxophone looks like, if you're not familiar with it, looks like a tenor, but it's pitched in C. And it's a favorite instrument of the string bands, the great fraternity of string bands that march in the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia. So it was fun watching the elementary band directors trying to, what are we going to do with this guy? I learned palm keys quicker than anybody in the history of saxophone. It was what book do we give this kid, And in 6th grade, I ended up with a Bundy saxophone. And in 7th grade, of all things, my dad bought a 7-foot Deegan marimba at Goodwill Industries for $50. And what does a kid do with a marimba? This is the mid-70s. He gets together with 4 of his buddies, and he's playing a band and started doing Herb Alpert and Tijuana brass covers. And then from there, I'll never forget, it was Chamber Hill, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania Fire Hall, New Year's Eve. I'm 13 years old. We got booked for this gig, and they kept passing the hat and passing the hat, because the more they drank, the better we sound. And you know how that is, you keep playing the same tunes over and over again. I walked home that night with $130 in my pocket and said, I'm going into business. So that was that. But in
It's
high school, so you follow the path. And I played lead alto in high school stage band. I was in the first clarinet section. In concert band, I was first violinist in the high school orchestra. And then for whatever reason, the band director said, drum major aged out. We're going to send you to the Smith Wallbridge camps. Remember those with Gary
sure.
Smith guys?
Sure.
And went and spent a week out there, and learned kind of the Big Ten thing, and the progression continued. And then the invitation came at Millersville. Their gentleman had graduated. They did whatever scouting, and so I was in that position. And so all through college, to get to your question, I played violin and then picked up viola wherever needed on the orchestral side of thing, and then focused on saxophone on the wind thing. And it was the combination of those two, as unusual as it was, that was the setup for me to come to Williamsport, because the position that they had, and our dear friend Ken Ressler,
Mm-hmm.
also at that time, our good friend Gary Markham was a high school band director at Williamsport at that time. Marching Millionaires were massive. And there was this little string program that was being rebuilt from the bottom up. So there's 250 kids in marching band. And my first orchestra was 11 kids in this little closet room where we basically mustered enough to be doing 9 o'clock and knock music at the end of the year. But they needed someone to teach woodwinds, assist with the marching band, grow the string program. So my career kind of became like a seesaw over time, which was 90% wins. I taught elementary band in a Title I school. And that was just an awful lot of fun. That was part of rounding out my gig. They had to keep me busy enough because the orchestral thing was small. And then, fast forward 10 or 15 years, and then it became full-time, pretty much full-time strings, and I had to kind of leave the marching band thing aside, because I started this thing called Strolling Strings, and then it became my marching band, and there was only enough of me to go around, so that was a change. But anyhow, that's the Cliff Notes version.
Well, I think what's interesting is most of the people watching this, you are part of each of those genres, so they can identify with each one. I mean, you've eaten something from the entire buffet, which I think is great. Walt, because we always talk about how important teachers are in the musical community, the teachers themselves, subject matter certainly, discipline certainly, but the teachers, how important they are. Who were the people that influenced you, that mentored you, that you looked up to?
I think of the guys that gave me breaks when it might have been questionable. And it started with I'll run through the list real quick. There was Mickey Cochran, who was my junior high school band director. We had moved from the city to the suburbs. And so I'm walking into this new school as a 9th grade kid. I don't know anybody. It's that tenuous time in your life. And Mick just helped pave my way. Made me feel very welcome, gave me opportunity. I would end up playing organ for when kids were coming in for assemblies, because he was a commercial musician, and and he saw enough. So he gave me experiences. High school band director Noel Staley believed in me and gave me the chance to do the drum major thing. Ron Schaefer, retired from Hershey, Pennsylvania Public Schools, was the conductor of the Harrisburg Youth Symphony. I was always his assistant principal, second violin, because I really played out of tune, but because my high school band director was a fanatic by playing Fillmore marches and stuff all the time. And I'm playing clarinet, so I could sight read anything. So he would put somebody who played in better tune with better technique next to me, and we complemented each other along the way. At district orchestra, whenever you go for the competitive district and regional festivals, by the way, I loved, going there, because I made such friends with the timpani player, because I was always in the back end of the second violin section, hanging out with the drummers and whatever. But back to the mentors, John Colangelo, my sax teacher at Millersville State College, was one of the key players in my life. And he was the great sax teacher, but he was the guy that steered me through, kept my train on the appropriate track. And he was never afraid to say, Straiton, if you ever get the urge to practice, don't fight it. Working with Gary, working with Paul Kellerman, who succeeded Gary at Williamsport. Paul was the teacher's teacher. He was the guy that took me as the young buck who thought he knew everything, as all of us do when we come into this business, early in our 20s, and said, no, you have quite a few things to learn. And then ultimately, the guy who our dear mutual friend was Ken Ressler,
Mm-hmm.
who mentored me up until his transfer to Texas Christian University, who allowed me the error of my ways, always had my back, and had that incredible gift of just correcting you in a way that you wanted to be self-corrected. So those are my guys.
Wow, that's quite a lineage of people that were around you. What was it they say? You want to be the best, surround yourself with the best,
Amen.
and
And
that.
think of your career. I think in my career, we all end up becoming a unique sum total of all of our parts. You
Exactly.
know, and we might know overtly what pieces we picked up, but I think a lot of that also is covertly.
Right.
Working day to day, side by side. Borrowing, to your point, from the best of the best. And I've been really blessed along the way, including you. Part of why I'm sitting here is your fault, because it was 2 or 3 years into my teaching gig, and you came to Williamsport, and that was where you and I first met. And gosh, we won't quantify the number of years since then, but I think there's a 4 in the first digit, and I'll leave it at that.
Um, Walt, help us out here a little bit. You're an educational support manager. That's the fancy title, right? What does an educational support manager do?
Varies day to day. What I would suggest is we are the ultimate relationship creators.
Mm-hmm.
We serve as the ultimate, hopefully, dot connectors, the comprehensive solution providers. And that the goal is to connect teachers and students and administration and parents and music dealers and help forge a stronger, tighter community, all to advance the role of music education. And what I love about this job is that no 2 days are the same. Because what is today? Today is Thursday. On Tuesday of this week, the various phone calls of the day included working with a talented young band director way out in the middle of nowhere in northwestern Pennsylvania. A local private foundation just found $3,000, and his program is bursting at the seams. And could he get a couple more clarinets and saxophones? So that was the first call. Then the next call was with the executive director for the fine arts in the school district of Philadelphia, talking about ongoing needs, assessing needs, and helping provide needs in his program for his 180 teachers in that district. And then got off the phone from there and spoke with my good friend Kelvin Washington at Howard University to hear his story about his drum line playing for the inaugural parade and everything that kind of went along with that. So it's just no 2 days are the same, but it's fun just to be able to find ways to help people and to get people to communicate better and to help them advance their cause. Because no one went into this business for the money. Everyone went into this business to grow kids, enhance the art, build community. And to your question, as an education support manager, that's what my gig is. I am a horrific golfer. I don't know if you play golf. Paul on the other end of the TV screen plays golf, but the name of the game is, depending on where the ball lands, determine what club you use. And when you start a relationship, you tee off, and then if it lands in the fairway, then that determines a club. Or if it lands in the rough, that determines a club. So it's just having the right awareness, which really we just open with, how can we help you? And it might be professional development. It might be through our product offerings, the inventory system, help people assess where they are. Because to establish a future, you need to know where you are, but you also need to go deeper to see where you've been and help people get the data to tell that story. And at the end of the day, do you have instrument needs? Do you have a growing program? And you've seen it. My colleagues Rick and Randy and Sean have seen it. We go into band rooms. We did a band room visit with my great district manager friends, TJ Wakehole and Jared Cowell up in New England. I'll never forget, we walked in and we were doing this little school outside of, pardon me, outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, and we came across a Conn baritone saxophone. We traced the serial number back, 1908.
Oh my God.
And these are the instruments. And funny, it's like a time-match watch. It's still, it's still ticking and it plays, but there are other things that don't play so well. So it's fun helping them to develop and tell their story that then can help them get resources that they need. And it might be instruments, and we are a business, and we are the last American manufacturer. Or it might be professional development where we can bring people to help make that teacher stronger. It might be a financial consultant to meet with the chief financial officer of the district to figure a way how to make this stuff happen. So going back to the golf metaphor, depending on where that relationship ball lands on the course determines the club that we can play. And that's what my job is as an ESM, to discern that and hopefully help make it happen.
Tell us about the string track at Consumer Institute Connect.
It was an honor and a privilege to help begin to bring that together over the past couple of years. And I have a specific personal attachment to the Sherlin Roth brand, which is our string brand with under the heading of the Consumer family of instruments. It was the grande dame of the school orchestra, Jackie Dillon, who in my second year of teaching, I brought her in to adjudicate, and she said, okay, you're a nice kid and you're going to do okay, but you really need to get your fanny out to the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic. And she kind of took me under her wing, and I would bring her in then to, to help run master classes and things over the years. So it had a natural affection, then fast forward however many decades, and I'm working with the privilege of helping to advance that brand. So last year was the first time, we've dabbled with, or we've offered some things previously with the string track, but last year was a real great year, particularly with the leadership of you and Mike Campice and Steve Zaff to take the Consumer Institute virtual, gave us an opportunity to do some things we might not have had a chance to do. So specifically last year was a chance to celebrate our legacy and to bring in a lot of Consumer or Sherlin Roth and Legacy Lewis and also Blazel clinicians that were all, again, part of our heritage. And to talk to them on one hand about what changes have happened in the industry and see where they're going in terms of string education. And then on the other hand, bring in some of the young bucks like Sue Hahn and Scott Laird, a former student teacher of mine who's done very, very well for himself in spite of who he student taught with, and had impact on the industry and just do some things differently. And then it was real fun to bring in Regina Carter, as a kind of a surprise guest artist who talked about, her background growing up as an urban African-American violinist in downtown Detroit. And, she took it to New England Conservatory and then said, that's not for me. And I need to find my own voice and to have her share that experience. So, that was last year. This year, we're going to go a little bit wider, hopefully a little bit deeper. Really looking forward. We just started to piece this year's Institute together, but I really like what we have on the table. We're going to continue to bring the best of the best, to celebrate the past, extract the best of the future that we know exists right now, that will bring up the finest of the guys who are there, but also with an eye toward the future.
Yeah, people loved it. You did a great job serving as the drum major for the string track to put those two together. How's that? We're dealing with pandemic times. How important is it for music industry and music education to lock arms right now?
If there's a stool in your house, there's 3 legs. A 2-legged stool doesn't work. A 3-legged stool does work. And that's music industry, educators, parents, all 3 together. Minus any of those, the stool wobbles and can't stand. And right now, as we view the relationships and the synergy, it's interesting because I think it falls under that heading of the sum total of the whole, or the whole is larger than the sum total of the individual parts. What was that? Was it the 5th dimension? Tim, united we stand.
Yeah.
Divided we fall. That great tune. On one hand, it's a very natural synergy. You remember the musical Oklahoma? I think it's Oklahoma. Help me here. The farmer and the cowman should be friends. I think it's from that Broadway musical song. And it's sometimes, as an ESM, it's a great opportunity to remind the teacher that dealer with a profit incentive is not the enemy. And it's also sometimes appropriate to remind the dealer that a teacher needs the services above and beyond just the best price. And particularly as we all live now in an Amazon-ish kind of world where instant gratification and get it in 48 hours or whatever, this relationship is just absolutely critical for the health of programs, the health of communities, all the way around. That they are inextricably linked, kind of like my fingers in this pen at this particular juncture. And one without the other, isn't as strong as when they're all bound.
Yeah, and the ESMs certainly. I mean, for everybody who's listening to this, regardless of what's going on, pick up the phone, get to them. They'll be. I mean, they're Redditors of the music world. They'll be there. They'll help you. They'll take care of you. Okay, we're gonna play word marathon here, buddy. I'm gonna throw a word at you, and you just react to it. How important it is in this journey that we're all going on together to get to the destination of music for every child someday. All right. So here we go. Communication.
There's this guy named Lotzenheiser who I think has written a couple books on the topic. And my top three thoughts are communication, communication, and then more communication. You can never have too much communication. Sometimes when we think we should let something go, we shouldn't. And you always want to be cautious to never overplay your hand. But that, I think, has to be at the forefront of your mind. If you're going to advance your relationships with your kids, you've got to communicate. If you're going to have a successful program with the background of parents and administration, you've got to communicate. You really have to communicate in that regard. And it comes into the role of the community. You need to be always working to get to, how do I get the word out? What are the offerings that we can create? That was what the Strolling Strings were, was our rapid deployment force. Because an orchestra is sitting up on a hill, and particularly in a band community, we had a branding issue. We had to do something. That became my Navy SEALs of orchestral music in terms of doing it. And that was a form of communication, point being, a form of communication in a community that then helped solidify the strength of the program. So yes, it's all about communication at every level.
Well, and that's what you do every day, right? I mean, that's your day, is communicating. So here's the next word, Walt.
Go.
Relationships.
Can't have too many. And it's a 360-degree circle, which maybe builds, Tim, on the communication aspect, because it's relationships with your students. I'll come back to that. It's the parents, administration, community. It's the janitor. It's the secretaries in the office. It's all those people who that depend on you, but ultimately you're going to depend on them to help make sure that everyone is successful. But particularly, I'm struck by, as you brought that up, a conversation I had with an educator yesterday about, how I've got to do this Zoom thing, and I'm half the time I'm with kids live, and the other time I'm with kids by themselves or at home. One of the best things, and it comes back to the old algebra pride, pardon me, on the back of the coat, is we have that unique opportunity to forge relationships, particularly with kids, particularly at this time of isolation. People just not being together. And if nothing more right now, you can have your ensemble thing, and you can have your ensemble rehearsal, and maybe you're going to try and do virtual sectionals. But I think the communication piece, one-on-one with Johnny, the euphonium player. Johnny, just checking in on you. How are you? We are uniquely positioned to have kids more than a semester or a year. And right now, the best thing we can do, I think, as if I'm in teaching, is I would be trying to find a way to allocate time just to touch base. How are you? It's what you do. How are you doing? Are you doing okay? Things at home all right? We'll get back to normal here, but you're going to be okay, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's just vital. Absolutely vital.
Amen. Communication, relationships are fuel and the forward motion, everything. Okay, here's the next word for you, buddy. This is great. Attitude.
It's everything. People follow you. They're watching you when they're not watching you. They're watching your overt behavior. They're watching your covert behavior. We're on all the time. And I think it's incumbent upon us to always project a positive attitude, a can-do spirit, and do it in the right way for all the right reasons and for the right means. That's how, and particularly again in this particular time where attitudes are sagging, it's about picking up. The gal that cut my hair this morning was going through like a real rough patch, and it was a time to remind her that while there's a global pandemic and there's political noise and all that stuff can flavor things, We can't control that, all this other stuff. The one thing we can control is our attitude. And it's important for us to do that because everyone's watching.
Well, and if you go back, there's been some, for all of our lives, there's been toe stubs or things went wrong. You're one of the most positive people I know. Positive meaning you're always moving forward and things are working. And there's got to be times you want to go, how do you pull yourself to that level where predictably Walt Straiton is going to be positive and optimistic?
That's a great question. I'm a Norman Vincent Pealian kind of guy. Mm-hmm. I grew up, I don't want to get into all types of spirituality. I had my first church organ gig when I was 16. And it was fascinating. I needed to be positive on one service one time where I was supposed to be accompanying this anthem in the key of D flat. And my fingers didn't do real well in the key of D flat, and this was your bad church choir. And they had just gotten one of those new Allen digital organs that had the automatic transpose finger or feature. And so my middle finger trying to play a G flat ricocheted off, hit the number 3, and moved the anthem up a minor third. And lights are blinking, and the choir is trying to find movable, it gave new meaning to movable do. And the choir is trying to figure out where they are. And I'm like, these lights are blinking. I'm like, oh, what did I do? And the choir director with red hair, his face gets real red. And I looked and was like, oh, I see what I did. So I naturally responded and pushed it back to 0. And the choir went, and then again, trying to find the key area. So it's important to maintain a positive attitude, no matter when you step on those landmines of life. But I guess I brought up the church thing because to me, going to church was just something you did. And, I grew up in the Lutheran church and all that stuff. But for me, it was Pio who kind of just tied it all together. And the book, seriously, the book of Power of Positive Thinking, time-honored classic. There is a power with that. And you look at the Dale Carnegie stuff, and you look at the Stephen Covey stuff. Some people dismiss it as fluff, but the reality is extracting the best, and then throwing a Lotzenheiser book or two, and it's all about keeping that energy forward. And if you can't do it, find a way. Talk about balance. I remember watching Randy Greenwell saying he talked about work-life balance. So exercise, that comes back to relationships, the ability to communicate. All this stuff is inextricably linked.
Yeah. It's the one thing we do have control on that compass.
Yeah,
and so forth.
That's politely, that's the pulpit of Tim. And that's what people keep. We feed off that because, and that then goes right into leadership. People are going to respond to whatever it is that you demonstrate, and you just have to find ways to keep that candle burning.
Yeah. One more word. Here we go, buddy. Loyalty.
Tantamount to success. Period. That's in every phase of your life. That's loyalty to your profession. That's loyalty to a spouse or a significant other. That's loyalty to the people, your students. That's loyalty that's critical for the organizations that you work for. And particularly in a day and age where that can be a real fleeting commodity.
Yes.
And I think we reap the positive, or in this case, perhaps the less than positive benefits of, bouncing everywhere along the way. Being true to yourself, true to your friends, true to your family, true to all things that you are represented in is just absolutely key and vital for the success of others and also yourself.
We can go on forever. As people are listening to this, what one thought, Walt, would you give them as they navigate these uncharted waters? What one, particularly those teachers that are doing 3 different things and it's all new and it's all different, what one piece of advice would you share with them?
Be authentic. Be authentic in your approach to all people, places, and situations. Don't try and BS your way through something. You know something, you don't know something, you're frustrated. All this stuff is okay. I think the key is just authenticity, because I think that word can link to the other ones that you taught, that you spoke to. But particularly, again, to your point, in this time and era, it is okay to get frustrated, but we have to work our way out of it. It is okay. I mean, under all the headings and captions, I think just authenticity always, but particularly now, that would be my encouragement. Do everything you can to be the most authentic you can be.
Yeah, and that's what we certainly need for all of us, for being a role model for the students.
Yeah,
So
we
that
do our best. We
yeah,
do our
they have an anchor. Walt, I love you. You know that. You're a dear brother. Thanks for giving us a hunk of your time when you could be out in school. So I know you're going to do that next. And to all of you, thank you for coming to Backstage again. And we'll see you next time at Backstage. And we'll continue to bring these people to you. We're so blessed and fortunate to have Walt Straiton as one of our Division of Education family members. And you know why the Division of Education is like it is now after you've heard Walt. So chin up. Let's let the music begin. And we'll see you next time on Backstage. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Bye, everyone.